Hey, um, how are you doing, girl? It's your dad, Miguel. So nice to for you to click on the link and hang out with me today. Thanks. I'm just gonna make myself a little comfortable right now. It's a little late this evening, but I did want to spend a few moments with you, face to face to face. Spending time with you is valuable to me. It's valuable. It's important. On a scale from 1 to 10, at least for me, spending some time with you, even just a little bit, in exchanges of ideas and information, on a scale from 1 to 10, it's actually a 10 for me. I was talking to a friend of mine, a friend who I admire very much. He lives in Santa Barbara. He and I were at a self-development seminar at Yoga Soup one time together. And I was happy to see him there. And during one of our exchanges, one of our conversations during the evening when we were together, he gave me a little bit of insight that maybe I didn't take to heart as much as I have in the past. But one thing he said was that he was impressed about how important relationships were to me. And I thought that statement was really revealing. I think it revealed something that I don't admit very often. And that is that indeed relationships are really important to me. In fact, sometimes when I think about it, I imagine that maybe I exaggerate the importance of relationships because it's really amazing about how key they are in my life, how much of a key consideration they are. Really, depending on how my relationships go, that sort of is the sort of signal for how the rest of my day is going to go. For some reason, I'm not sure what it is. It just so happens that for me, I connect my relationships with pretty much every aspect of satisfaction with my life. If my relationships are going well, my life is going well, and vice versa. If it's not going well, then my life's not going well. And it's in some respect, it sounds kind of like a bad idea from just a pure analysis. When I analyze it with my rational brain, this focus I have on my relationships, almost an over focus, it makes me wonder whether it's reasonable or not. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people have this focus and are as focused as strongly as I am. Maybe they are. I mean, I hear hints about that idea that people care what other people think. I mean, and I recognize that it's just part of our evolutionary development as human beings. We do a lot to stay in the tribe. And, there's a lot of consideration that goes toward how other people view me and how I view other people to keep a cohesive unit, right? A cohesive tribe that's able to overcome problems in its external environment, right? And hey, I get it. One of the most deadly kind of punishments that any civil society can give to one of its members is excommunication, right? It's sort of casting that person outside the circle. It's being the weakest link, right? And so naturally, the brain sort of grabs on to these these social and cultural and political ideas pretty strongly, maybe in a way that's sort of outsized to their real impact. I think today, we're doing pretty well. Human beings have pretty much cracked the project of civilization. We certainly haven't fully succeeded. Like, there's still scarcity in the world, and there's still war and interpersonal violence. We're doing our best to overcome those problems. There's a lot of aspects of commerce that is unreliable and fraudulent. And, we're still working through all that. But, it just so happens that the tribe of yesterday is not the tribe of today. There are differences, and the differences are profound. People can live separately on their own as singletons today and live full, happy lives. This is something that really wasn't the case even 100 years ago. Human beings are social creatures. We rely on other people. And usually that reliance on other people was direct. It was face to face. It was, through interactions, through our use of communication skills, But, that's not so true anymore. There are a lot of people with communication skills that are subpar that live just fine. It's been years since they've spoken to other people, and they're okay. They're doing well. Some people are doing extraordinarily well. Maybe they make huge sums of money. It's possible. If you find a niche, you may not really need to speak to anyone. Go to work. You may not even need to go to work. So, things have changed economically. Poverty, in many respects, at least in the Western world and in a few nations, is not what it used to be, right? In the past, it used to be a death sentence for certain, right? Today, not so much. There are programs, there are family systems, there are just ways that people can survive without others. I mean, retirement is a really good example where, you've got the source of income. Maybe it's an annuity, and it's going to come every month for the rest of your life, regardless of what you do, right? And, you may choose to live alone. You may choose to live by yourself. And you can do that perfectly fine. A lot of people do. A lot of people make that choice. It's easier to sort of blaze a trail on your own today in today's society as an older person than to rely on someone else. And so people make the choice to be single, and sometimes, and quite often, they thrive. Sometimes they don't. We all run into health problems, financial problems, physical or mental problems, and, the house of cards begins to fall. But the punishment of separation from the group is not what it was today. And so, it really does pay, I think, to reconsider, some notions that I have about the importance of relationships, and maybe you too as well, Em. I don't know how important relationships are to you, but to me, they're very important. For me, and I admit that a lot of my focus on family is probably the result of my upbringing as a Christian, right? It's also probably the result of my mom and dad's enculturation in sort of a more poor environment. And also culturally, my dad's, say, Mexican and Indian background, a Native American Indian background. Uh, rightfully places relationships and places family blood ties, so to speak, at a very high level of importance, right? It's a value that's meant to be preserved, you know? And, when you think about, say, religious wisdom literature or wisdom literature relating to Christianity, I mean, these are books that were written by people who essentially lived in the desert, right? Desert dwellers. And naturally, the focus on relationships is like, it's really strict, right? That's the focus on monogamy, or for the class of people that were priests, say the priest class. Maybe they didn't have romantic relations, because they were devoted to their god or something else. So whatever their mythology was, basically they had units that were really important, and relational units, their tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Everything was about every question was about whether someone was in group or out group, right? Are you a homosexual? Oh, you're out group. Are you a woman? Oh, you're out group. Right? It's all in group, out group construction, right? It's these rules, right? In fact, if anything could define Christianity, it's just the prevalence of these rules, right? About, oh, we've got to act or abide by these rules because, there's usually a reason, whether it's God or whether it's the good of the tribe. Sometimes they're one and the same, but unstated. You have to realize, I really realize that I essentially have been indoctrinated, socially inculcated with this idea that relationships are primary, right? I have a friend. She is a single mom, and she's looking for companionship, right? She's looking for partnership, cooperation with a man, a romantic partner, to help her out raising her child and supporting a family, right? And I think she is realizing that, and she's dabbled in the dating world a little bit, but she's realizing that the men that she's meeting who are more focused on lifelong commitment are religious men. At least that's the impression I'm getting from my conversations with her. And so she is interested in increasing her devotion to her religion so that she can become a woman that a religious man would want to have as his romantic partner, right? This makes perfect sense. This is completely rational, right? If you're focused on familial bonds, you want to hook up with a romantic partner that has a similar view, right? An equal view about the importance of commitment. And these rules are present, and they're rife in Christianity in general, and all the desert religions, really. And so, and when I say the desert religions, I'm referring to Judaism and Islam. So yeah, there's this incredible focus on the family, and I think that if there's one thing that's really stark about today's society, is how a focus on the family is really, well, it's less intense. The value is less important than it ever has been before. And these ideas of a less important family values as being less important, they are really pervading our culture right now. Serious. Like right now, there is how should I say, there's a cultural and a social coming apart at the seams of relationships between men and women, particularly romantic relations. I mean, it's really, you can notice it in, say, the prevalence of divorce and the prevalence of singleness. This is a powerful trend that's happening right now, and I think that it is related to sort of a general view of religious values as being less important. I mean, this may or may not be the cause, but it certainly is related. So I guess, Emily, what I'm describing here is this idea is that basically I'm old school. I recognize that, and you know what, my conception of my world and the meaning that I give to it is really wrapped up in this idea of relationships. And you know what, I think I just have to. I think, as society is changing as much as it is, as there's a tectonic shift that's going on in our society, and it's really become apparent to me about how this focus on relationships, whether it be romantic or non-romantic, is a cultural artifact. It's a cultural artifact of very poor societies, very religious societies. And I admit I've been essentially indoctrinated by these ideas. And I think that's why separation for me is really painful, right? I really acutely feel the sadness and the loss of separation when things don't go well between family members or friends. I'm really sensitive to those kinds of shifts and changes in relationship. And it is somewhat distressing to me, And I also recognize I'm the old guard, so to speak. I'm not the new guard. I'm Gen X, right? And then there's the millennials, and then Emily, you're part of Gen Z. And every subsequent generation is valuing this filial connection less and less and less. This romantic connection less and less. And it's really shaking up society quite a bit. We've heard about I think it probably, I'm sure this trend's probably been going on for a long time, particularly, well, ever since the agricultural revolution. It's all about, really, it just turns out to be about money, scarcity of resources. If it turns out that you're super wealthy, then you don't need tribal ties. You just don't, and they become kind of a hassle. But if you're super poor, the only way that you can survive is, in partnership with others. And so really your relationships are a life or death. You see that? So here's what I've been kind of thinking lately. I'm thinking about sort of life and the meaning I give it, through a few lenses right now. Over the years, I've been interested in psychology. Essentially, one of the tenets of cognitive behavioral therapy is this idea that, reality is never the problem, right? It's always how you think about reality, right? The reality is, for all intents and purposes, relatively neutral. But the stories you tell about reality, well, those are where the judgments come in. Those are where values come in, like moral values, and really just preferences and choices, right? And it's the sort of these preferences and choices and wants and needs which are overlaid on top of a neutral external reality. And this is what cognitive behavioral therapy teaches. And you know what? It's true. I mean, I truly believe this to the core of my heart, that really it is that life is and the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your thinking. And it's not actually what happens to you that's ever a problem. It's how you think about what happens to you. So, it gets when, if you think about it on a higher level, I mean, what does this mean? I mean, how am I supposed to engage with the world? Does this mean that I need to think about reality as being neutral all the time? Would that be the enlightened view to take? If you were only looking through the lens of cognitive behavioral therapy, then maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what you're seeking, complete peace. That's sort of the mark of enlightenment, when you can have total acceptance for whatever is going on in the moment, total acceptance for whatever has gone in the past, and total acceptance for whatever will happen in the future. That's what I'd call like a CBT enlightened individual. And also one who enjoys their life. But you know what? I've been thinking lately that there might be a different conception of the ideal life. And here's what it is. I'll just tell you what I think it is. The idea to sort of manage life well is not to consider everything that happens as being neutral and valueless. And that for preferences are always subjective. But really, I think the truth is just a variation on that. And here it is. What I don't like about that CBT view, a view which I 100% wholly agree with, by the way, what I don't care for that view is that it sort of leaves a person somewhat directionless. I mean, if you're always accepting everything in the past, everything in the present, and everything in the future, what is there really to strive for? It kind of leaves a person in limbo, right? It's about living an inspired life is about living a dispassionate life, right? So you could as a person whose main focus is creating meaning in the world. I mean, you probably get a good sense of why that's a hard pill to swallow, right? If that's the pill I'm expected to swallow, to sort of get good at this thing we call life, right? So I'm thinking there's got to be another way. And here's what I think the other way is. Instead of viewing, say, all of nature and all of reality as being neutral and accepting it as the ideal, what I'm thinking is that life really is, it all is all about what I'd call the multifaceted view of life. Now, here's a slightly different conception. It accepts the fundamental pillar about reality being neutral at its base, but there's a point to it all, and this point is active perspective making or active perspective taking. It's sort of an acknowledgement of the infinite number of values and the infinite number of perspectives one can take on sort of like the basic neutral reality experience, or I should say the basic neutral external reality experience. When I say that things are multifaceted or multidimensional, when I talk about a multi-theoretical perspective, what I'm talking about is a mind that is continually creatively working to figure out different perspectives from different value focuses, right? If there are an infinite number of value focuses, then, in order to be clear-headed in my world, if you want to be sort of an inspired, um, enlightened person, the key feature that you need to cultivate is the ability to see a situation in multiple ways and to sort of accept the truth of each of those multiple ways. That is a truly enlightened person. And really what that means is that is demands energy on my, instead of thinking of reality as neutral and acceptable all the time, which essentially requires no energy. I mean, it does require energy, but you don't have to necessarily do a lot of creative thinking. But maybe you do. But this other idea about life sort of being multi-meaningful, sort of infinitely multi-meaningful. This perspective demands a lot of energy from you. If in order to be properly enlightened, what your duty is to be able to explain a certain situation from multiple perspectives. This is a skill that takes energy, creativity, huge amounts of creativity. It's a skill that takes it's a lot of imagination, a lot of curiosity. How many different perspectives can you describe about how to view a certain situation? 10, 100, 1,000? What I'm describing to you is a life that's actually hugely passionate, right? It's a person who could take a situation and acknowledge and pursue one set of values, change, acknowledge and pursue another set of values, and continually, act in ways that conserves the most valued values, and imagines thoughtfully all the different perspectives one can take, and seeks to understand new perspectives continuously. Do you notice how that requires a lot of work? That literally requires an infinite amount of work, right? To come up with a million ways to understand, say, the death of a spouse or the death of a child, or to understand a divorce, and to sort of be able to sort of express and explain each of those perspectives, understand them fully. What I'm talking about takes a lot of energy and commitment and focus. And, while you're explaining these different perspectives, I can imagine a person just on fire with passion about one subject or another, in the affirmative or in the negative, right? In a way, a person that's living his life like this, sort of acknowledging the multidimensional aspects of life, the multi-value aspects of life, this person is living, he is like, now, the question remains to be seen if this person is like truly effective, because what I'm describing is a person who's spending a lot of time examining and analyzing different perspectives about what's going on. In fact, an infinite amount of time. So a person's efficacy certainly might suffer if they're focused on perspective taking all the time, taking different perspectives of a certain situation. But I think that sort of the curiosity, energy, and passion is important. So really, The choice of enlightenment is what I'd call passionless or passionful, right? You can have either one. You could even have both. I guess if you alternated between the two. But I mean, if you think about it, this idea that everything is neutral and to be accepted is also a perspective that sort of is included in this alternate view of mine of the multifaceted view of life. So that's where I'm at right now. This multifaceted view of life is essentially my theory of everything. You know, if there's moral outrage to be had, you know, maybe it's on this side, maybe it's on that side. My vision of the ideal is a person who's able to sort of see both sides and somehow make a decision after contemplating all the various sides. And I'm not talking about one or two, but I'm talking about real creativity, real curiosity, real interest, real passion, real discovery, real exploration. You know, that sounds like an infinitely long solution to any problem in reality. And it could definitely, so, you know, from a person who's committed to perspective taking, let's say they get a divorce or maybe they get cancer. If you're committed to perspective taking, then you're alternately in awe about the cancer diagnosis that you have, and angry and sorrowful, right? About the losses that you're taking as a cancer patient. That kind of view, you know, the multiple perspective view is different from this whole idea of a person with cancer who's just accepting the fact of the cancer and trying to live at peace with that acceptance, you know, at peace with that understanding. You know, that also can be quite active. But this idea of the multifaceted life, I think, is well, here's the promise of the idea of the multifaceted life. The promise is that if you do experience loss, say, or feelings related to anger, right, or because of injustice or whatever, that you feel those feelings deeply and sincerely as you embrace those values. And then, after a short while, imagine a situation from a different perspective, conserving another set of values, a different set. You know, with that may bring happiness and joy, right? Doing it again, the next perspective might bring peace. And if you do it again, the best perspective or another perspective might bring anger, right? So this conceptualization of the world that I describe, instead of just viewing everything as neutral and to be accepted, I'm thinking that this multifaceted theory is a better theory because it involves lots of energy, creativity, intelligence. I mean, it explicitly requires all of that. It requires fact finding, you know. It requires boundless imagination. You know, one person who I admire very much, who I think does have quite almost boundless imagination, is self-help guru and author Byron Katie. Now, I've pretty much read all of her books, except for one that is actually unpublished right now. And I did manage to get my hands on the manuscript, a copy of it, right? Or at least the book, anyway. So my point about all this is that, what is my point about all this? Oh yeah, I'm drawing a distinction between the two kinds of ideal life. One where the guru An inspired person thinks of life as being neutral and passionless at its core. And then another where a person views life as passion filled and dynamic and ever changing. So that, here's another promise of this view, of the multifaceted view of life, is that, if you're upset about something, well, if you continue to seek out different perspectives, then in a short while, you may be laughing unhesitatingly, right? So, and then following that, you might be incredibly sad, and then maybe following that, incredibly angry again. I think it might be a pure. I think it might be a pure and more true to say that life is just complex and multifaceted, and there is virtue to sort of writing down, conceptualizing your view of reality and the meaning of life. It's worth writing it down. It's so worth writing it down that, that's really the point of it all. Certainly, if you want to have peace. And it's about being a true believer from one angle, and then a short while later, being a true believer at a slightly different angle. And then all taking an entire 360 of that. Yeah. I think that is what might be the ideal world, the ideal life, the enlightened life, right? The morally enlightened life, I think, may just be sort of the consideration of this multi-theoretical perspective, you know? And when it comes to a multi-theoretical perspective, the starting point is, I don't know, the starting point is figuring out what perspective to cultivate, right? And then, of course, moving on to the very next perspective. So it's really changing and dynamic, this new conceptualization I have of reality. The old conceptualization, it's fine and it gets you where you need to go, and it's also quite important and quite true. A lot of the time, solving problems is a matter of how you think about the problem. It's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. It's a matter of super creativity. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if this idea is enlightening to you or not. It is actually quite enlightening to me. I'm sometimes I wonder, what's the point of it all? And it's easy to feel that way when a person is locked into this idea that nature is neutral, and that preferences, wants, needs, desires, etc., are subjective. I think that perspective is true, and I think it can be tweaked a little bit more for more effective use. And the change would just be this idea that, it's valuable to have multiple perspectives. And it's important to exercise your brain enough so that, if something bad happens, like you lose a parent or you lose your spouse or you lose a child, I can imagine just being consumed by that fact. And I think I've heard news stories of people, sort of meting out interpersonal violence against themselves, violence against others, when they're locked into this single perspective, this mono perspective. A multi-perspective can get one out of this mess, right? In fact, you're still accepting reality. And you're also not just accepting reality, but you're exploring the subjective nature of reality continuously. Yeah. So, excuse my yawn. My poor brain is kind of tired because last night I came in rather late from Shebang, the Music and Art Festival. I came in rather late, and I had a hard time falling asleep. I think a lot of it had to do the fact that I was so active, right? Did a lot of dancing, hung out with friends at this music festival. I was tired when I got back, and thing is, though, I was actually still kind of amped, and that is, I still had some nervous energy when I returned. I was still feeling pretty energetic, feeling pretty good, and I don't know. I like this multi-perspective model. I think it's important. I think what it really has the potential to do is sort of minimize the amount of pain in the world. If a person sort of considers a tragedy in their lives again and again and again from the same perspective, they just are basically building their own rut, right? They're building their own grave. They're not thinking flexibly about the situation. They're not thinking creatively about it. They get wrapped around the axle, which means that they hold on, right? They're grasping about maybe what the past was like, or maybe I don't know. When you overfocus on one perspective, I think you get into trouble. Even science is a multi-theoretical science. Just look at the theories of gravity and quantum mechanics, right? Completely different theories. I mean, really, I'm not really sure from a mathematical standpoint. The only thing that makes sense that sort of is covered by those theories, say quantum theory and gravitation, is just that the math that's used to describe, they use different maths. If the only commonality is that the math that is used to describe the two phenomena is, the math is the same. Or, oh no, the math is the same on a higher level. That is, it's non-contradictory, right? It's it's evidence-based. Anyway, one thing I'm noticing about my brain right now is that I'm feeling tired. Fact is, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I mean, I probably only got 4 hours of sleep last night, and I've got big day tomorrow, and it's already nearly 10 o'clock. I think what I'm going to do is, that is 10 o'clock p.m. I think I'm going to go to sleep. This is what Miguel looks like when he's really, really tired. He's always putting his hands on his face, putting his hands in his eyes, and he's sort of losing track of his conversation. He's yawning a lot. He's also a very engaging speaker. Why would that be the case? Why would fatigue and tiredness make me a better speaker? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't make me a better speaker. It just changes my quality a little bit. But yeah, I definitely need to go to sleep. My brain is begging for some time off. It's been going all day today, and I got a big day tomorrow, and I've got a super big day on Tuesday. Why, you might ask? Why Tuesday of this month? Day after tomorrow. Today's Sunday. It's because I'm getting my braces taken off on Tuesday. Yes. Can I be happy and celebrate and tired at the same time? Well, I just proved that I could be. All right, tell you what, I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. Oh, now that I think about it, I may not be able to talk to you tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Okay, maybe I will be able to talk to you tomorrow. But anyway, I got a big day tomorrow. Big day after that. And then this weekend, like on Sunday, I'm traveling to Arizona. So I've got big plans, big ideas. Anyway, Em, I hope you're doing well right now, and I hope you enjoyed your weekend. And this coming week is going to be, I hope it's going to be super fun. I mean, the end of the school year is nigh, right? It's almost here, and man, how nice it is to sort of finish things up. My welding class, I'm ready for it to be done. Honestly, I'm ready for it to be done. Let's get this. I want to take the final exam ASAP. And I'm ready to take my new class, which is a quilting class that's coming up this summer. And I need to sign up for that class soon. I think I sign up really soon, like maybe even tomorrow. So cool. Always things to do. So Emily, take care of yourself. I want you to know that I love you. I cherish our relationship together. And it may be because I'm old school, right? I cherish our relationship because of my upbringing, but I just do. I don't know. I care a lot about him. I think it's also a primary feature of my personality too. It's that deep, right? Brain structure, right? Anyway, good night, girl. I gotta get some rest, man. I gotta put this brain to bed. I love you.